Holy moly! And welcome to part 2 of the Skansen Zoo Tour, and we are entering the Baltic Science Center, which is right on the other side from the aquarium, and this is the facility that probably should be called the aquarium because it has a lot of fish tanks. As you see, the first floor of the Science Center is all about fish tanks. Fish from the Baltic Sea. And many people, I think, skip this building because they are like fish, who cares. But I say, don't sleep on the Science Center. For the first, the fish of the Baltic Sea are actually interesting to watch when you see them in these kinds of large fish tanks. And some of them are friggin' huge. And you don't really think about how large the fish of our native seas can be. And it can be really, really large, even though they aren't treated like the fish of the coral reef or anything like that. But I also now think I should talk a little bit about what part 2 of the tour will be. Part 2 of the tour will be the Baltic Sea Science Center, where we are right now. It will be a little bit of the open-air museum parts of Skansen, and with domesticated animals mostly, and of course the children's zoo, the Lill Skansen. That will be all in part 2. And it will not be exactly the order I visited all these places, but it will be to kind of give it a more thematic cohesion. And yeah, this was pretty cool. There were these flatfishes who hides in the sand that you first don't even see they are there. But we will now still look at fish tanks and right. While we are still looking at these beautiful fish tanks, seriously, you should go to the Science Center if you are visiting Skansen. We will talk about what Skansen is. Skansen is mostly focused on Swedish nature and culture, meaning the open-air museum part is of course the old Swedish countryside, as you will see. And the animals are also thus Nordic heritage breeds and Nordic wild animals. But right now we are on the second floor of the Science Center, and here we are walking on a map of the Baltic Sea. There is Åland, where I'm from, and Finland and Estonia, and you turn around and you follow the Swedish coast down to Denmark and northern Germany and Poland and the Baltics. Also on the second floor of the Science Center, as we'll see right here, is this place with a lot of places where kids can go and push on buttons and learn stuff about the Baltic Sea. It has a lot of that. I just went out and in. This is the old kind of carnival part. It was mostly closed when I was there. And here we have signage. I can also, when we look at the signs, say it's a little bit of a labyrinth, the whole park. And we are actually still going uphill, so we have now again went uphill. But there are signs and there are maps, so you have to kind of... No, we are already looking at chickens. This is the kindahen or chindahen. And as I said, we are talking about old local breeds or heritage breeds. And that means they are native breeds of mostly Sweden that were bred for the local climate, for the local environment. These breeds are not the mostly economically viable for modern farming, which is why they are very rare today. And some of these old houses you can actually enter the inside of. This is again showing off the museum part of Skansen. You can enter this old farm. This was for a farmhouse for 2 families actually. There were 2 rooms, one for each family. So this was not a very rich household. And there are people and guides who dress accordingly in old-fashioned dresses. These were supposed to be midwives that tells you about life in I think it represents the late 1800s and early 1900s from the style you see here. This big place was supposed to be for a breed of domesticated ducks. They weren't out, instead there were Canada geese everywhere. This is the Scanian farmhouse. You could see some sheep in the background, but I couldn't get any footage of them. But here is more information of the old native breeds. And now I am at what I call the abandoned habitat. As you see, there are a lot of rats here. This is a habitat that has been used for predatory birds, but right now hasn't been used for anything for a while, and nature abhors a vacuum, so animals have moved in, like you saw the rats. The rats were actually kind of cute. And the magpie, and there was a squirrel, which I think one of the guests was feeding, which is why it was so... which is why it came so close, because it was looking for food. Not afraid of anyone. And now we are coming to the children's zoo, or Lill Skansen, and this was for the Gotland rabbits. And the dome was so kids could crawl into tunnels and then appear in those domes and look closer at the rabbits. Now we are inside, and this is the guinea pig habitat. The inside is actually a big playground with habitats on the sides and a playground in the middle, and there's a lot of kids running around. I usually skip this place. Glad I didn't do it this time, because then I wouldn't have all this footage. This was for a bank voles, but I couldn't see them. And then we come to a little rat habitat for brown rats. Couldn't see them either, but I just saw wild brown rats outside in the abandoned habitat, so I guess it doesn't matter that much that I couldn't see them. You could joke that the rats just escaped and moved here, but probably completely different rats. There are rats everywhere in the wild too. And this is the cutest things ever. These are harvest mice. The harvest mouse is one of the smallest mouse species there are, and they are so adorable. Then there was this, which was the house cat habitat, which is just a living room, which I thought was funny. And then we have a little pen for Öland dwarf hen, a small chicken breed from the Swedish island of Öland. This was sand lizard. We have them even in Finland, but not that many. Usually we see forest lizards much more. This is the European green toad, animal we don't have in Finland, only in Scandinavia, in southern Sweden and Denmark, and the same for the European tree frog. Only southern Sweden and Denmark for the Nordics, but of course all over Europe otherwise. This is a grass snake. You usually have problems seeing any difference between them and the common viper. The problem is, of course, the grass snake is not dangerous and the common viper is venomous. And this is a common viper. And while there are ways to see the differences, you don't always do, and so you have no idea. These were the European pond turtle. They had a nice little pond which also had a goldfish in the pond. And yeah, we are now at the indoor viewing for the rabbits. These are still the Gotland rabbits, and then we have this cage for swift parrots. There were actually quite a few parrots, and I couldn't first get good footage. I get a little bit better footage now, but I wouldn't say it's the best. Parrots also weren't really doing much. There was also a petting zoo at the children's zoo. This was with Roslagen sheep. And speaking of sheep, we are now looking at the domestic animals. So these are Åsen sheep from a place in Dalarna called Åsen, which they are named after. Yeah. These are all native breeds, so we have Swedish mountain cattle, and also they share their little pen with Jämtland goat. And I have more footage coming with the cows and the goats. Yeah. So I can say a little bit more about Skansen. As you see, there is not much tropical animals outside the aquarium, and that is exactly according to the plan, because Skansen is all about Nordic and Swedish culture and nature, as I mentioned before. There are a lot of ponds also, ponds a little bit everywhere. So you see also a lot of wild bird around, like seagulls and stuff. And these birds are not afraid of humans. They're so used to humans because there are so many humans there all the time that you can be really close to them. And while I didn't experience it, Canada geese can be a little bit of a problem usually if they are not afraid of humans, which they're usually not, and especially if they're so used to humans all the time, then they can absolutely be up to mischief. So I guess keep your food safe. This was the food court, by the way. It was like this big place and a lot of food stalls all around. But now we are again looking at Homo sapiens in their natural behavior. Laughing. Yeah, this is again the open air museum taking over for a bit. And it's not just the countryside, because then you end up and this looks like an old city street. So this is probably meant to represent an old street in Stockholm from the early 1900s. That would be my guess. Yeah, with old signs for shops and gunpowder and dynamite. But yeah, this is the open air part of Skansen. So next